Hi, and welcome to 647, 6 stories for 7 a.m. because there's a famine of truth in our land. And this is your quick news fix. And the truth starts now. So listen, this is the truth, and this is the most important truth for everybody listening. And that is, we are going through a massive historic event. And if you have not been paying attention, then you're not seeing that across the globe since Charlie Kirk's passing, there is an incredible revival going on, and millions of people from all over the world are out and dealing with the loss of Charlie Kirk, dealing with the reality that on a global scale, we are dealing with a battle between good and evil. And all of these folks are pretty much aware that there is something supernatural going on in terms of a global awakening to faith in Jesus Christ. And if you've missed that, you're missing the biggest news event in the history of our country. So if you missed watching the service today, I watched from 2 p.m. to 7 p.m. It was basically a 5-hour Christian worship service honoring somebody who gave their life for a great cause. And I'm not going to talk about the whole thing. I'm just going to talk about one thing. And that was Erica Kirk's address to the group. And all I can say is it was amazing. And wow, did she represent Charlie well? And she represented Jesus well. And she represented Christians well. And she represented women and wives well. She represented the office of CEO well. And then she did something extraordinary. She blew the secular minds of viewers around the world by forgiving her husband's murderer. Erica put a huge smile on the face of the God of the universe by expressing this mighty teaching of Jesus about the power of forgiving. It was incredible. And it was by far the highest and best tribute to her husband, to her Savior, and for the future of our country and the Christian faith. God bless Charlie and Erica and their kids. We have some wonderful things to be looking forward to. And we are so lucky to be born for such a time as this. All right, take two. Trump basically during the service said he was going to have a major autism announcement for today. And I can't find any investigative leads because basically the news landscape is 98% about this service and about Charlie and about everything going on with that and about the fact that there's no civilian that ever was honored like this, to have the president, to have all of his cabinet, to have a plethora of senators and congressmen there, and it's just unheard of. But Trump made an announcement that he's going to make a very, very important HHS announcement with Bobby Kennedy about autism. So I looked everywhere to find any kind of leads about it. Can't find anything. But there were things from last week. And by the weekend, they've all been scrubbed by Big Pharma. And AI is totally in the bag for Big Pharma now. So you can't get any decent information. But last week, there were a lot of stories about pregnant women taking Tylenol for aches and pains being a significant culprit for autism. And that as I went through those medical reports, the way they were reported statistically, it was very hard to understand how significant the findings were. So in other words, it was being covered up. They could argue that it wasn't, but I'm just telling you, I do this 5 days a week, and the information was being hidden. So that's one thing, that the cause of this is something that we all have in our medicine cabinets and treat as something innocuous. And, you know, I'm kind of a big guy. I've always taken 3. And if something's a real injury, I take 6. And I don't pay attention to it. And now here it is, this possibly awful thing that we've all had around that has been causing this. And then he said, and there may be some very positive things on the horizon. And the only thing that I saw last week about that was a report on semaglutide, which is an anti-diabetic medication that has restored the disrupted DNA damage and repair pathways in BTBR mice. So these are black, tan, and brown inbred laboratory mice, a strain that's used to model for autism spectrum disorder. And semaglutide has been reversing what's happened in those mice and holds great potential for treating autism spectrum disorder. So that would be just a wonderful gift if pregnant women not using Tylenol would stop autism, and if we can treat all these folks who have autism and they can have significant improvement because they're seeing it in these mice. All right. Not a sure thing, but certainly something great to hope for. Take 3, TikTok sale moving ahead. What a group. The Epoch Times reports that President Donald Trump named tech founder Michael Dell and media mogul Rupert Murdoch, his nemesis, and Rupert's son, Lachlan Murdoch, when asked about the American billionaires lined up to take a stake in a U.S. version of TikTok. He says, I think they're going to be in the group. A couple of others, really great people, very prominent people, Trump said. We're getting into the Trumpian pitch here. Said in the interview recorded on September 19th, and they're also American patriots. They love this country. I think they're going to do a really great job. Well, it's questionable whether the Murdochs are patriots, but so be it. Trump also said Oracle and its CEO, Larry Ellison, would be involved in the deal. Trump had announced the deal was approved on September 19th after a 2-hour call with Chinese Communist Party leader Xi Jinping, as Chinese export control laws had prevented ByteDance from selling TikTok without state oversight. He shared little about the terms of the deal, but reiterated that the buyers were already lined up and the details already worked out. Not completely, apparently. The deal was done and expected to be signed in the coming days, said Caroline Levitt. So TikTok, the big thing at issue in this whole TikTok thing is this content recommendation algorithm. So what's that in plain speak, and why is it dangerous, and how have the Chinese been using it against us? This algorithm measures the microseconds that you hesitate over an image. And it measures and keeps track of all of them. So every image, and TikTok's constantly putting them in front of you, right? So it's very addictive because you're constantly seeing something new that you've never seen before. And so that keeps you locked in. But then the algorithm is measuring what you hesitate over, and it starts to build a profile of the things that you're interested in. And so, believe it or not, there's a whole profile on you, and that's why you start to see more things showing up. Not necessarily that you have a big interest in, but for some reason you hesitated on. And then all of a sudden there's more of that showing up. So it's a way to manipulate a population. And I can't even guess how many ways you could be manipulated, but it's potentially dangerous. TikTok makes a lot of money. It's worth a lot of money. And I think it's significantly dangerous for young people because they just look at their phone and then all of a sudden hours go by and they're just going through it mindlessly because their brain starts to get locked on constantly seeing something new and exciting, and you're never really investing time. And wow, I'm not a neurologist, but I know that's bad for you, okay? As opposed to reading a fine book. All right, enough from Pops. Take 4. Alligator Alcatraz had such a positive effect that DJT is going for the full Monty. So what do I mean by Alligator Alcatraz having such a positive effect? Well, it's how Trump grabs the news cycle. It's how he trolls all of the libs. He comes up with these ideas. They have fantastic optics. They carry out all kinds of outrage, and then he owns the news cycle, and then he makes them happen, and then there's even more outrage, and then they're working, and they're a part of solving the immigration issue. So trust me, he had so much fun with Alligator Alcatraz that now he's going for the full Monty, and that means Alcatraz on the island in San Francisco Bay. Yeah, the Alcatraz. So Trump is making moves to take Alcatraz, the prison in San Francisco Bay, away from the National Park Service, which claims it makes them $60 million a year as they run 1.2 million tourists through the site. I've been there a couple times. It's a lot of fun to see. Here's Al Capone's cell. Here's Machine Gun Kelly's cell. Here's the guys who escaped and apparently swam away, and here's how they did it. It's interesting. So 60 million a year, of course, the National Park Service doesn't want to part with this. So they're coming up with every kind of study saying, oh, it's going to cost too much. It'll cost way too much. And it's bad for San Francisco, and it's bad for the environment, and it's bad for nature, and it's bad for little flowers that we've been cultivating on this 22-acre site. But you know what? It's a 960,000 square foot edifice in terrible shape because the Park Service hasn't been keeping it up. And it was closed in 1963 and basically hasn't much care since then, right? Well, that's just got Trump written all over it. What does he do? He grabs these old post office, these huge edifices, turns them around. He does it in much less time and for much less money than all the projections, because any of these federally owned, what do we want to call them, historic sites or things like a post office, by the time the budgets are put together, there's so much payola going on with the unions and with the politicians that things just go through the stratosphere in terms of price. But on June 17th, Attorney General Pam Bondi and Secretary of the Interior Doug Burgum, they visited the site. They went there to check it out as a possible high security facility. So now that Trump is deciding, well, look, if I take it out of the hands of the National Park Service, I remove all the headaches, right? He just did the same thing with the B1 visas, right? He's trying to stop those because the Silicon Valley billionaires are saying, oh, no, we need those B1 visas because these people are highly trained and Americans won't study science and won't study math and won't study the difficult things that we need in Silicon Valley. That's all a big lie. They're bringing in people from basically India and paying them nothing. So Trump just decided, you know what? I'm not going to court and argue this and change the law and everything. It takes too much time, but I can change the fee to bring somebody in. So the fee right now is $1,000. Guess what? He changed it to $100,000, right? He's the orange roughie. He knows how to get his elbows in the game. And so what's that going to do? Well, now $100,000. If you're a billionaire in Silicon Valley and you need somebody with special talent, pay up. You got the money, pay up. He's just blowing the lid off the scam. And it's the same thing here. He takes it out of the jurisdiction of the Park Service. And now all this nonsense that they're doing, they came up with, what is it? Alcatraz closed as a prison in 1963. So for the Bureau of Prisons says it could take up to $2 billion to make Alcatraz operational. So when you talk like that around the orange roughie, you just get him excited. He loves building projects and especially problematic ones. And can you imagine that finished product? There's going to be a gold Trump Alcatraz sign all lit up facing the city of San Francisco and all those crazy libs over there. And that will definitely leave some hot pies on the sidewalks there. So be careful if you visit. All right, take 5. Church attendance is way up since Charlie was called home. So Catholic and Protestant churches are reporting attendance increases of approximately 15% 2 Sundays ago on the 14th and over 20% on the 21st. And I'll just tell you, at my church in Valrico this Sunday, the attendance increase was 100%. It was just unbelievable. And in my adult Sunday school class, 30% increase in the attendance. And also at my church, there's a new Turning Point chapter that's having its first meeting this week. Okay? And that's in Little Valrico, Florida. This is happening all over the world. Okay? Turning Point, the request for these new chapters, it's over 60,000 requests now. And Charlie's only been gone 11 days. Okay? When I say there's something supernatural going on, that's not an exaggeration. If you're not paying attention because you don't believe in God or you don't like religion or any of that stuff, you should still be paying attention because this kind of thing has never happened in the history of our country. And we've had revivals, and this is going to be a significant one. And all of this precursor information is all over the place, and it's massive. So if you're going to live in the same world with everybody, you might as well know what's going on. So many churches are reporting parking issues as first services are completely full, and then the second services are full. So all these cars are there at the same time as the first people leave, and the other people want to park, and there's lines, and they're going other places to park. And of course, this is happening all over the country and in other countries. And what does the New York Times have to say about it? Well, their report on the religious implications of Charlie's passing, there's no mention of any increase in church attendance. Figures. All right, take 6. This is an arms study. It's a fascinating one. This is a multi-generational advanced reprobate mind study. First time we've done multi-generational. And wow, it's not a good look for leftists. Might be why I picked it. I can't be sure. So Breitbart's reporting this. It says lawsuit. Children of LGBTQ plus advocate Senator Ron Wyden allegedly drove assistant to suicide with homophobic taunts. Now, we don't make any judgment calls about this. We are simply studying what God says in the Bible is when you reject me over and over and over again, eventually I'm going to stop. And when I stop, I give you over to a reprobate mind, a broken mind that cannot be fixed. And it does not make decisions that are logical. And so you're incapable of logic or sharing logical choices with anyone. So here we go. You be the judge. A lawsuit alleges that the children of U.S. Senator Ron Wyden, who is a gigantic pain in the ass in the Senate, and if you've seen him, the person he wants to go after the most is Bobby Kennedy, and everybody who wants to go after Bobby Kennedy and get him fired is on the payroll of Big Pharma. And one of the worst is Elizabeth Warren, and he's right up there with her. And she's been paid over $800,000 by Big Pharma so far this year. And Bobby shot that out in the hearing. So I don't know what Wyden's been taking. Anyway, U.S. Senator Ron Wyden harassed their mother's personal assistant with homophobic taunts and sexually explicit comments, driving him to suicide. So this is something that happens regularly in New York, not the suicide and not the homophobic taunts, but phobic taunts, but this is people having an assistant who are too elite, too wealthy, too busy to deal with their kids in the morning and get them to school and pick them up and do their events. So they hire an assistant, right? And then typically they abuse that person. So there's all kinds of funny books about it that have been published, and they're actually awful. So the details of the lawsuit reported by the New York Post present a stark contrast to the record of Senator Wyden, who has been a longtime advocate in Congress in support of gay, lesbian, and transgender issues. For 2 years, ending in 2024, 35-year-old Brandon O'Brien worked for Nancy Bass Wyden, the senator's wife and owner of the Strand bookstore in Manhattan. O'Brien's tasks included driving the couple's young children to school in New York City and watching them at trips like to Disney World, according to the Post. The lawsuit was filed by O'Brien's husband, Thomas Maltezos, against Bass Wyden and her company, Bass Real Estate LLC, in Manhattan's Superior Court. It alleges the disturbing behavior of the couple's kids began almost 3 months after O'Brien took the job in 2022, when the couple's 10-year-old daughter exposed herself to the assistant and made explicit comments as she asked him about his intimate life. Maltezos alleges in the suit that the mom did nothing about the incident. So we're seeing this is multi-generational. These are broken minds of the children and the parents and possibly the assistant. So additionally, the Wyden's teenage son berated O'Brien with homophobic slurs such as fagot and zest kitten. The suit claims the boy also allegedly threatened that his football team would rape the assistant. They sound like darling children. The son's behavior was so out of control that his mom once had to mace her son, but inadvertently maced O'Brien in the process, according to court papers. When O'Brien finally quit in frustration a year ago, Bass Wyden filed a report with the NYPD the next day, accusing him of stealing $650,000 in credit card and other thefts. And believe me, this is all typical stuff that goes on in Manhattan. So O'Brien committed suicide in late May. That's terrible. 7 months after he left the job, because they started a whole harassment campaign on him. And authorities dropped the theft case after the suicide. Lawyers for Maltezos argued the accusation was false. So who can tell what is going on when everybody's got the reprobate mind and they're all just flailing? But you know what? We're not flailing. We've had a transcendent moment in the history of our country. We've had, if you're a believer, you've had an absolutely incredible, exhausting, draining, and edifying experience trying to support, pray for, and be a part of what's gone on in the Turning Point family and in the Kirk family. And ultimately, it's going to be incredibly inspirational. So it's Monday. It's a tough day. But you know what? Things are going to get better and better and better. And from our standpoint, we know why they're going to get better, because you're going to share us. You're going to like us. You're going to make comments. You're going to do that uncomfortable thing where you push us out into your networks. And then eventually we get to the tipping point, right? Turning Point started in 2012. Charlie was on people's couches for 3 years. We're 14 months into this, and we started from zero with zero knowledge of what to do. And look at what's happening. People are loving this service and everything that comes with it. And so let's build it up. Let's build it out. Let's do it Charlie style, all right? And guess what will happen? I'm going to ask God to put his hand over you and bless you as you head into this work week. And he's going to do it. He's blessing our entire country right now. In fact, I would say he's blessing the entire world. So think about that for a second. This terrible thing that happened on the 10th has become a worldwide, amazing opening to the love and truth of the Savior of the world. Can't beat that. All right. Have a great day, and I will see you, God willing, tomorrow. Take care.